Good afternoon, YouTube. Yours truly, MiketheLAdonsfan here on Don's Football Classics. Coming at you with part 4 of the Los Angeles Dons football history from 1946 through the present day. And I hope everybody's having a good day, cutting toxic people out of their life, and thanking God every day that they're alive on this earth. And if you can, please subscribe to this channel and my main channel, MiketheLAdonsfan. Give my videos a like. Feel free to subscribe, share with your family and friends, and hit the notification bell when my videos drop. And now, let's dive into the history. (1946). The Los Angeles Dons started their football debut in the All-American Football Conference. The head coach was Dud DeGroot, coming over from college, and the owner was Bill Lindheimer. The president was Don Amici. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby was the president. And they had some really talented players that started out with Al Lolotai. And Bob Reinhardt and Bill Renovit, who was there starting off. And Charlie O'Rourke, also the quarterback of the team. But the first game for the Los Angeles Dons in the LA Coliseum was against the Brooklyn Dodgers. The first professional football game ever in the LA Coliseum, and had a crowd over 20,000. And the Los Angeles Dons won the game 20-14. They started off strong, but in the middle of the season, kind of slumped. They went on a slump in the middle of the season, losing 3 in a row. And those 3 losses in a row cost the Dons to play in the first ever All-American Football Conference Championship. But they did have a highlight win first in that, but coming out of that losing streak, they played the Cleveland Browns in week 9 and won the game by 1 point, 17-16. And they would finish the season 7-5-2, including a blowout win over the Buffalo Bison 62-14. The next season, you had some more talented players coming through, but the results were still the same. Glenn Dobbs and Ezra Sugarfoot Anderson, along with Ben Akaginian and Joe Aguirre. Well, Joe Aguirre was there since 1946, but anyways, and I forgot about John Kimbrough was there in 1946, along with Bob Kelly. Yeah, Jim Kimbrough and Chuck Fendenbach was there since 1946, and Harry Clark and Bob Nelson. The Dons put together a new talented squad, but all that talent could not get them a championship. So they finished again with 7 wins. But Dud DeGroot, in the middle of the season, was out, replaced by Ted Skippy, and then later by Mel Hine. But the 47 season highlighted another big win in Cleveland against the Browns, the defending world champions, and the final game of the season against the Rockets, 34-14. And in 1948, more of the same. But they drafted 2 guys, Herman Riedemeyer and Lynn Ford, who would go on and play for the Browns and Packers and have a decorated Hall of Fame career. But the results again remain the same, this time under first-year man Jim Phelan, going 7-7. But the team was on the verge. If they just went out, they would play in the All-American Football Conference, but they would lose their last 2 games and would be knocked out of the AAFC All American Football Conference Championship game. And in 1949, the team bottomed out. But they did made history, drafting the first African American in George Taliaferro out of Indiana. But in 49, the Dons fizzled out and highlighted one of the worst losses in franchise history at home week 8 against the Cleveland Browns, 61-14. Never could beat their Northern California rivals, and the league passed out in existence. And the Dons would not merge into the NFL with the Browns or the Niners or Colts, but some players did merge with the Rams in 1950. And speaking of the 1950s, some big fan who's a huge Dons fan would bring that team back to existence in this fun segment and make them one of the greatest franchises in all of sports. All right. How I became a Dons fan, and how I became a Dons fan is, as you know, I went to the University of Central State for about 2 years, at HBCU down in Wilberforce, Ohio. And in the auditorium, they had this place called the Grill, where, when the young men and women would order food from that place, and one guy one day walked into the place and he had this jacket with all the teams on there, and the one team I saw on his jacket was the Los Angeles Dons, and I looked and I said, wait a minute, Los Angeles had a team called the Dons? So what I did was, I went to the Paul Robeson Library and I looked it up. I went and looked up this team, and I looked and I'm like, wow, they really were a real team. And I figured, man, I know I got Madden. And, sometimes when I play Madden, I said one day, when I play Madden, I said one day, when I get on the Madden, I'm going to create this team in their colors and in their jerseys and their image, and just, have fun with it. And that's what I did. And I just, came up with this fun segment on YouTube. And I started, and let me remind y'all, I started YouTube in 2022. My very first video was the LA Dons All American Football Conference, the first one on my old channel, MiketheLAdonsfan. That's the very first video I did, playing the Randy Newman I Love LA, showing all the old LA Dons from the All American Football Conference from 46 to 49. And some guy, I know I'm going a little off topic here, but some guy on my old channel, that first video I did, said that his grandfather did play for the Dons. I can't think his name. He was in the comment section. He said his grandfather played for the Dons. Can't think your name right now, but when I get to you, but I'm gonna shout you out. So you get a shout out when I next video, when I catch your name in the comment section on my old channel, I'm gonna give you another shout out. So there, and I think Maurice, if I'm not mistaken, when I did the part 2 of the LA Dons history and All American Football Conference, when I was giving him the history, and he said he heard about the Dons in the mid 70s. He's a big Rams fan, by the way. He said he heard about the Dons in the mid 70s growing up. I want to give him a shout out too. So he heard about heard about the Rams in the mid 70s, and I mean not the Rams, but the Dons in the mid 70s. He's a Rams fan, and he said if the Rams if they never came back to LA and they stood in St. Louis, he was hoping that the Dons would be the next team to be that team in LA because the historical reasons because of the name, the image, and the history behind it. So yeah, the Rams are back in LA, but I want to give him a shout out about that. But yeah, let's get back to this. Yeah, so when I was in the Paul Robeson Library looking up this team, I figured, wow, they really were a talented team. They just couldn't quite get over the hump because, of course, the Cleveland Browns, my hometown team, because I am from born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and the San Francisco 49ers, a really good team, but always finish behind the Browns. So I figured, you know what? This gonna be my team for life. Outside of Cleveland Browns, even though the Dons are no longer in existence, this will be my team that I'm gonna rock with. And once I turn on that Madden and start creating the team and having fun playing and winning, all is good. So now we're going to get to the 50s after this. 1950s. All right. Sorry about that, y'all. The 1950s. 1951 in MiketheLAdonsfan segment. All right. Jeff Gold was now the coach, taking over new players. In their first game in MiketheLAdonsfan fun segment in the NFL was against the Iowa Kings, who would later be the Hawaii Kings and the oldest team in the AAFC. In a primetime game in the LA Coliseum, the Los Angeles Dons would win 34-22. But that was good as it got. They only won 3 games in 1951, but they went to Washington, the nation's capital, beat the Washington football team 44-13, but that was it. And in 52, the Dons would suffer their worst season ever in franchise history, only winning 2 games. But the highlight of that is beating the Detroit Lions 42-10 in week 1. But that's good as it got. And then Jeff Gold was out. Yeah, after 1952, they only won 2 games, and Jeff Gold was out. The Dons was really searching for direction and a coach who could lead them to the direction that the Dons want to go. And they stumbled across a guy who was on Paul Brown's staff, fun segment, who was in Paul Brown's staff, named Dean Allen. And Dean Allen was hired in 1953. And in 1953, Dean Allen was hired to be the Dons head coach. Coming over from the Cleveland Browns, Dean Allen was an unknown. But he did have some credentials. Dean Allen, he came in and, he got some really good players. He already had, Ted Burt was already there. Ty Harmon was there. But he drafted guys like Fred Lau, Mitch Johnson, Joe Talley, Luke Stubbs, Joe Mann, Bill Mansky, Matt Unger, Bob Mack, James Ford, Miller Haynes, Mike Stubbs, John Jay, Al Sticks. Guys who would be cornerstones for that team that would win the NFL championship in 57. And MiketheLAdonsfan's fun segment. And just like that, the Dons went to work. Just like that, they went to work. And in Dean Allen's first game against the Los Angeles Rams, their crosstown rivals, they would beat them 27-21. And it would be the franchise's first ever win against the Rams in franchise history. Yeah, that was a big deal. That was a big deal for that team and for the organization. Because at that time, they never beaten the Rams. And for Dean Allen to come in first game being against the Los Angeles Rams in the LA Coliseum, and to get that win, it meant a lot, not only to the organization, but to the city of Los Angeles. And just like that, the Dons, the Dons' fortunes started to change. They did beat the Iowa Kings in Iowa 35-13. But the team would finish 5-6-1 in Dean Allen's first year. But in 1954, things would slowly but surely get better as they would go 6-6. Same thing in 55. They would go 7-5. And in 1956, the Dons would earn their first winning season in the NFL in Mike's Fun segment and their first ever berth in the NFL championship game. But in the NFL championship game, they would fall to the New York Football Giants, 35-10. That game hurt. I mean, we went 8-3-1. We were having great success. We were having fun, and we were just playing Don's football the way Coach Allen was teaching us and installing in us, and and then go to the NFL championship game against the Giants, and then we get blown out. That was devastating. But then again, that was a teachable, learnable moment for the Dons. They realized you can't just be satisfied of getting to the promised land. You have to deliver. When you get to the promised land, you have to deliver on what you set out of what you want to do. And in 1957, I think that Don's team would find that out. And in 1957, the Dons will have its greatest season ever in franchise history. Yeah, I mean, after the season we had in 56, going 8-3-1 and not finishing the deal in the NFL championship game, I think left a bad taste in their mouths. I mean, to just get so far and only to not finish the job really just lit a fire under the players and under the coaching staff and under the organization. So, hey, we got to do whatever it takes to get the job done. I remember, and I'll never forget, and I remember one of the coaching staff said he'd never forget this day. Dean Allen walked in to the office and to the players. He says, you think you did, and I remember he said this, you think you did something good in 56? Well, what you did in 56 ain't going to be good enough in 57. So you better show me a little more that you want to be champions. And that kind of stunned the players and even some of the coaches. But what he was trying to do was trying to bring them back to reality a little bit. Like, hey, you guys are not good. You guys are good, but you're not good enough to be where you ought to be. And that is to be world champions. So players and even some of the coaches took that as a challenge. And in 1957, first game against the Iowa Kings, they would show Coach Allen and the rest of the world how great, or I should say how good, the LA Dons really were. Beating the Kings 48-0, devastating the Rams 31-0 before a tie against the team that they lost to in the NFL championship the previous year, the Giants. But then the Dons start reeling off, beating the Niners 35-10, the Packers 41-0, the Bears 25-10, and their only blemish, and their other blemish outside of the tie, was a loss to the Baltimore Colts. Yeah, that Colt game, I mean, we had every opportunity to win that game in Baltimore. We had every opportunity to win that game, and we just could not finish the deal. And that was frustrating for a team like us because we knew we were a much better team, and to lose like that really lit a fire in us. It really kind of just said, "Hey guys, we got to do a much better job if we want to be champions. We really got to play better football than what we played against the Colts." And from that game on, the Dons would do just that. The following week, they would destroy the Detroit Lions 37-20, 35-0 over the Bears, 21-14 over the Niners, and getting revenge on the Baltimore Colts 31-0, and clinching their spot in the NFL championship game with the final win of the 57th season against the Los Angeles Rams 26-0. The team recorded 6 shutouts in 1957. Yeah, 6 shutouts in the 1957 season. I think at the time was a record. I think it still is to this day. 6 shutouts. 6 shutouts in a season. And for the second time in his career, if I forgot to mention, Dean Allen won Coach of the Year in 57, just like he did in 53. And the Dons earned a return trip to the NFL championship game against their old foe from the All-American Football Conference, the Cleveland Browns, and their rookie sensation, Jim Brown. Yeah, that game was big. Jim Brown was somebody we've never seen before. The Cleveland Browns, they were back on the map. But hey, we're trying to make our statement too. And we knew that we could not lose this game this time. And it's in the Coliseum. And boy, that day, the crowd was electric. And with the crowd being electric like that, we couldn't lose. And we were in the championship game last year, and they lost to the Giants. And just like that, the Dons would dominate the Cleveland Browns from jump. It would be Ted Burt who would have the game of his life, going 19 of 24, 399 yards, close to 400. Never been done ever in that never been done at the time in NFL championship game history. And the Dons will crush their old foes for the All-American Football Conference in the Cleveland Browns, winning the game and the championship by the score of 56-10. Ted Burt was the MVP. Dean Allen and the Dons will win the franchise's first ever world championship. That afternoon was one of the great days ever in Don's history. Not just in Don's history, but in the city's history. Because that's the first championship the Dons have ever won. They were entered against the Giants in 56, and they lost. Some bad things happened, but they rebounded in 57, came back with a renewed focus, and just finished 57 all the way through in a dominant stretch, and dominated the Cleveland Browns in the NFL championship game. And the Dons made their mark in NFL history. Not only beating the Cleveland Browns in the NFL championship game, but becoming one of the greatest teams ever in NFL history. Yeah, that 1957 team, outside of the 05 team and the Manny Reyes teams, the 57 LA Dons team is regarded as one of the greatest teams ever in league history in my fun segment. Because 6 shutouts in a season, scored more points, gave up the least, and was dominant the whole year. And the 5 years Dean Allen was there, he built this thing with great drafting, great scouting, great reporting, and just all about execution and being sound fundamentally and disciplined. And That's the reason why in 57 they won the championship, because they were more determined, more focused, and more disciplined. And he had a quarterback in Ted Burke to help him out, and he had guys like Ty Harmon. And you got great guys that are in the Hall of Fame, including Dean Allen, putting that town together and just bringing the championship to Los Angeles. And even the city was rejoicing. The city was rejoicing. The proud sons of California bringing the city of Los Angeles their first championship in franchise history. 1958, the team went 10-2. They went 10-2, a little bit of the same, but they did beat the Baltimore Colts at the end of the season to play them again in the Western Conference title game. But in the spot in the NFL championship game against the Giants in 1958, the Dons will fall 7 points short to the Baltimore Colts, who went on to play the Giants and win the NFL championship. And in 1959, the Dons will finish 8-3-1, but would not compete for an NFL championship. Key loss to the Rams at the end of the season cost their chances to go back to the NFL championship. Yeah, I mean that was a game that they had to win. That Rams game was a game that they had to win, and they didn't do it, and that cost them to go back to that cost the Dons to go back to the championship and win another one. And the 60s would be interesting. The 60s would be an interesting time for the Dons. I consider Dean Allen one of the great coaches in the league. Been to 2 NFL World Championship games, won one, lost one. You know, he was a tough coach, but he was fair at the same time. He always knew that he needed a receiver that he can count on when the big play need to be made, or he needed somebody on defense, an edge rusher who could get to the quarterback. He just, he needed some good pieces around him that he could surround himself with. And in his time with the Dons, he did exactly that. I mean, yes, at times he was hard on players, but at the same time, he was great with players. And that showed a sign that he was a really good coach. And if some sad events wouldn't happen, he'd be probably one of the greatest coaches of all time. The 1960s. Oh, snap. Forgot to put the record. Anywho, the 1960s. The 1960 season started out with a win in St. Louis over the St. Louis Cardinals on the Thursday night, but the team's fortunes declined after that. They'd only finish 8-4 and no more trips to the NFL championship game. But they did play in the playoff bowl against the Cleveland Browns, which they won 39-24. And in 61, Dean Allen's final season, the Dons will finish 7-6-1. And after that, the franchise would never be the same. Because in the spring of 1962, Dean Allen would pass away in a fatal car crash. Yeah, that was tough. That was tough for the organization, for the team, and really on the city, because Dean Allen really had a great potential to be one of the greatest coaches ever in our sport if that wouldn't have happened. And he really was just putting together great teams. But boy, when that happened, you could tell the team's fortunes kind of dipped a little. And we were just searching for someone who can pick up the slack. I mean, he was a great man, great man off the field. Did a lot of great things for the LA community. You know, he did a lot of great things for the players, even though he was sometimes hard on them, you know, but he was also fair. But man, he was one of the greatest coaches ever in franchise history. One of the greatest, one of the best people outside of football. That's what people never get to know, because he was a great person, and to see him lose his life like that in a tragic way, it was hard. Only 9 seasons, great 9 years with Dean Allen, and a championship. 1962, Mike Morris. Mike Morris, in place of Dean Allen, would take over the helm as Don's head coach and try to lead them back to greatness. They started off 62 on a real good note, but faltered down the stretch to finish 8-6. And in 63, they would finish 7-7. And in 64, they would bottom out with a 4-10 record. Yeah. Mike Moore's third year, it was not good. They finished 4-10, and everyone talked about get rid of him and fire him, and he's just not a good coach and all that, and things were looking dark, and I mean things were dark, but Bill Mace, who was the owner since 1951, decided to stick with him for one more year. And that one more year was really good, but at the end, wasn't enough. And in 1965, the Dons would rebound, going 10-3-1. One of the quickest turnarounds ever in franchise history and in league history. With the highlight win over the Green Bay Packers in Week 12 and beating the Baltimore... Ooh. They did beat the Baltimore Colts, by the way. Hold on one second. All right, beating the Baltimore Colts 27-12. And playing the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay for the Western Conference title. But in that game, 4 critical turnovers in the second half cost them to play in the NFL championship game against the Cleveland Browns. But the Dons, however, played an extra game. And this extra game was called the first ever Megabowl in Yankee Stadium against the AFL's Hartford Shamrocks, formerly known as the Boston Shamrocks, a team that we're going to know a lot more in this segment. Yeah, that was the official first ever Megabowl game. At the time, that was the only game that didn't feature an AFL champion or NFL champion. It was featured by 2 teams that came in second or third, whatever. Actually, it came in third. Well, the Dons did. The Dons came in third place in the NFL, and the Shamrocks came in second. No, actually, they came in third in the AFL as well. So the leagues decided, you know what? Let's put these 2 teams together and experiment, even though they're not NFL or AFL champions. let's experiment this Megabowl thing and see where it goes. Because the next year it would feature the NFL and AFL champion. But this was the first and only Megabowl that didn't feature that. And in the Megabowl, the Dons would come up short, losing the first ever Megabowl against a team that will be their nemesis, the Hartford Shamrocks, losing 22-14. Yeah, that game, they kind of looked at it. It was kind of a sort of like an exhibition game, but as the years went on, it got more serious. But that game, I don't know if the players took it serious, but the Shamrocks did. And that's the reason why the Dons lost. And the 65 season ended up being disappointing despite all the heroics. And coming up second in the West in the NFL, it was just, man, are we back to square one? I mean, what happened to the Dean Allen years when we would dominate and we would win? And to lose that Mega Bowl, the first ever Mega Bowl in Yankee Stadium to the Shamrocks, that was heartbreaking. And what made it more heartbreaking is I don't think the Dons took the game serious. And that's the reason why they lost. And just like that, Mike Morris was fired. And in 1966, John Hall would take the helm with new players, new quarterback and Brian Casey, new running back Randall Knight, Dookie Williams becoming the top receiver, Joe Randall, the defensive tackle, Mike Field, one of the best pass rushers at the time, Mike Mann and Alan Munoz, one of the best DBs, along with Quinn Davis. No, Quinn Davis was the best kicker, and Jack Mayer coming to the team. And with John Hall at the helm and Brian Casey at the quarterback position, the Dons would finish 8-6 in 1966, including the first ever win over the Falcons, 39-24. But that's what good as it got. And in 67, more of the same, 8-6, but a great comeback win in Atlanta. Yeah, they were down 2 scores in that game. But it come to show you, this Dons team will not give up. They will not quit. And that game in Atlanta proved it. And they came back, beat the Falcons 33-26. And things got better. 1968, they would finish 11-3, but no trips to the playoffs or NFL championship. That is until 1969. But highlighted before 1969, highlighted with their first ever win in New Orleans against the Saints. And beating the Green Bay Packers at the end. But in 1969, the Dons would have one of his best seasons in franchise history. Yeah, 1969. That was the year the Dons, Brian Casey, John Hall decide, hey, we're a good team. We got to go out and show it. And we got to show it and just let 1969 be our year. Because this is our time, gentlemen. And that's what he told us before the season started. John Hall and all the coaching staff and even some of the leaders on that team like Brian Casey and Ty Harmon and Mike Mann and Dookie Williams said, hey, we're good enough to win a title. Let's just go out and do it. And in 1969, the Dons would just do that. First game, destroying the Atlanta Falcons 55-0 before they lost to Iowa. But the Dons rolled through the next two until they faced the defending NFL champion Baltimore Colts, and they would crush them 52-10. That was one of the biggest fun, joyous days of Dons fans, of one of the Dons players' career. Dookie Williams scored 3 touchdowns in that game, and to beat the Colts 52-10 was great. And they followed it up with a 58-0 shellacking of the Giants until they faced the Rams. In Week 10 and lost. Yeah, losing by 10 to the Rams, it put a little dent on it, but we knew we couldn't be sidetracked with that loss because we knew we was going to see them again. They were going to see them again. And the Dons would roll through the next 2 games before they faced the Rams again. And this one had a lot of implications. Yeah, this game with the Rams, it was for not only for city bragging rights, but it was for the Coastal Division, for the Western Pacific Coastal Division, for a shot to be in the Western Conference title game, and a shot at an NFL championship. And this game will come down to the wire. It was a hard, tense, physical game with Deacon Jones and the fearsome foursome against the high-octane LA Dons offense. It was just a battle. It was just a hard-nosed physical battle. But late in the game, the Rams had a 20 to, it was tied at 20, but I should say. Actually, hold on. The Rams had a 1-point lead, 20-19, over the Dons. And Randall Knight made one of the greatest runs ever in Dons history. Yeah, we were at the 50, and I remember, and this is against Deacon Jones and Merlin Olsen and those guys. And I remember Ryan Casey handing the ball off to Randall Knight, and he just saw a crease and he just gone. And I think one of the DBs tried to tackle him and he broke it off, and he broke off another tackle, and he was off to the races, and the Dons just scored a touchdown. The Coliseum went crazy, and it was one of the greatest games probably ever in the franchise history against the Rams, in that series against the city. It was for the city, and boy, the Dons came through in a big way and got it done. And just like that, the Dons would beat the Rams 26-20 to earn a spot in the Western Conference title game, and they would finish off with a victory against the Baltimore Colts to face the Minnesota Vikings in the Western Conference title game. In that game, but in the Western Conference title game, the Vikings had all the momentum. Yeah, they were. The Vikings were moving. They were moving and grooving. They were just doing everything they can and they kept our fans quiet, sitting on their hands. And I remember on the sideline, one of the players said, "Hey, we got to make something happen." And in the second half, the Dons would do exactly that. They would make one of the biggest comebacks ever, not only in Dons history, but in NFL playoff history. They came back down from 2 scores, and I remember Brian Casey just put on a performance, especially in the second half, willing this team back to victory and beating the Vikings and just punching their ticket to the NFL championship game the following week. And just like that, the Dons were climbing back to the mountaintop, beating the Minnesota Vikings 38-31 to earn a spot in the NFL championship game. And John Hall was 1969 NFL Coach of the Year. Yeah, I mean, John Hall came in and took over 66 over Mike Morris, who had that great year in 65, or I say good year in 65, but couldn't finish the deal. And John Hall just just stepped in and did a magnificent job, just turning the franchise culture around and bringing it back to prominence. And in the 69 NFL Championship, the Dons will face off against the Cleveland Browns. And once again, the Dons would dominate the Browns and win the franchise's second NFL championship in franchise history, 30-13. Yeah, that was us just playing Dons football and just executing. And man, they all had a good game that day. And to win the NFL championship at home in the Coliseum, it was just unbelievable. And it was the last game. It was the last game of the NFL championship because in 1970, the NFL and the AFL merged the following year. And just like that, the Dons were going back to the Megabowl for the first time in 4 years. In the 1970 Megabowl, the Dons and Shamrocks were once again at it again in New Orleans. But just like the 1966 Megabowl, like the 66 Megabowl for the 1965 season, the first ever one, the Dons once again will come up short. And this one was no contest. Yeah, 4 turnovers, just really bad play. I mean, you could not play the worst game of the season that the Dons did in that 1970 Megabowl against the Shamrocks and give the Shamrocks credit. They did a marvelous job of taking advantage of the Dons' mistakes and capitalizing, including the big 65-yard touchdown pass, the Shamrocks quarterback to the Shamrocks receiver. And that pretty much put the nail in the Dons' coffin. After that 65-yard touchdown pass, we knew that game is way over. And just like that, the Dons will lose their second Megabowl in franchise history to the same opponent, the Hartford Shamrocks. And this Megabowl was the last Megabowl of AFL versus NFL because the two leagues will merge. 1970, the merger season. The Dons were in the NFC West, along with their longtime rivals, the Niners and Rams, along with the Saints and Falcons. But the results were the same. The Dons finished the 1970 season 11-1 with wins over the Bears, Chargers, Bengals, and the Niners, and winning the franchise's first ever NFC West and their second division title in franchise history, but their first NFC West title in franchise history. And the 1970 NFC divisional round against the Cowboys, the Dons would beat them 44-27. And in the NFC Championship, they would dominate the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota 35-13, earning another trip to the Megabowl. Once again, against the Hartford Shamrocks, the team in the AFC West. In the 71 Megabowl, this one was dramatic. The Shamrocks took a 10-3 lead halftime lead. But the Shamrocks in the third quarter went up by 10. But the Dons, proud sons of California, refused to quit. After a field goal by the Dons kicker, the Dons quietly chipped away. And they forced a turnover and the Dons drove down the field and scored a touchdown from Brian Casey to the tight end. And you're thinking to yourself, and Dons fans had it wondering, is this the year that the Dons are going to finally overtake the Shamrocks and win the Megabowl? The Dons got a 3-and-out. And late in the game, the Dons would have a chance to answer. And the Dons were driving late. The Dons were driving down the field. They're executing to perfection. I mean, wow. They're moving the ball great, and they're just executing. They're thinking, oh man, Dons fans in Los Angeles and in the Orange Bowl and around the world was just thinking, oh yes, come on. This was the time. This was the time to finally beat these Shamrocks who beat us twice in the Mega Bowl. And finally we could get one on them. Finally, this is the time. This is the time. And then we get down to the 5-yard line. Down to the 5-yard line. And everyone knew what happened. The play fake, the ball is snapped. Brian Casey fakes it to Randall Knight. He's looking for any receiver to get open. Shamrocks had good coverage, so he rolls to the right. And the Shamrock defender, DN, comes at Brian Casey's face, the rush, and Brian Casey kind of hesitates, and he throws it, and then the Shamrock defensive back comes in the nick of time and picks it off in the end zone. And you just talking about your heart just ripped out of your chest when you know that this supposed to be our year to win the Mega Bowl, and then the Shamrocks once again just come up with big play to just break our hearts. And that was just that loss, that 71 Mega Bowl loss, that was devastating. And I don't think at the time, I don't think the Dons fans could ever recover from that until later years. And just like that, the Dons would lose their third Mega Bowl in franchise history. Once again, to the Hartford Shamrocks, 17-13. And once again, the Shamrocks were Mega Bowl champions. Yeah, that was the toughest loss. The 66 Mega Bowl and the 70 Mega Bowl, yeah, they were bad losses, but this loss against the Shamrocks in the 71 Mega Bowl, in the Orange Bowl, that was a heartbreaker. That was the one that just... it just took a lot out of you. And we're thinking, man, are we ever going to beat this team? Are we ever going to win the Mega Bowl? And that was something that Dons fans had to live with throughout the time before the Coach White era took over. 1971, the last hurrah for the LA Dons. Started in 1946 and it ends in 1971. And the Dons would finish the season 7-7. But some moments from that season, they went to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs 38-13. And their last two games, they went to Cleveland and beat the Browns. And by the way, before 2024, that was the last time the Dons won in Cleveland. So there. But the last battle of Los Angeles, the Dons will win by a point. 27-26. And everybody remember Brian Casey throwing that touchdown pass to the slot receiver, Brian Hallwell, making that probably one of the greatest catches in franchise history and NFL history over the Rams to close out the final battle of LA, their last home game in the NFL. But their last road game in the NFL and their last game in the NFL was on a Monday night in Atlanta, where the Dons put on a show and a performance for the ages. Yeah, they went to Atlanta and they played the game with all their hearts because they knew this was going to be the last game ever in the NFL for them. Didn't know what the future was going to hold. Didn't know if they were going to ever come back to existence, but they played that game with all their hearts, and they just won that game on a Monday night in Atlanta. And they exit stage right, and they left the NFL with a win, send it off right, and just like that, the Dons run in the NFL and Mike the LA Dons Fun segment was over. The 1990s. In 1996, the Dons were back in existence. When the Rams and Raiders left Los Angeles, it was now opening season for Mike LA Dons Fun segment to bring the Dons back to existence. Yeah, I think it was the perfect timing because the Dons started their very first season All-American Football Conference in 1946. They could have came back in 95, but they figured 1996 would be the better year to come back, and with better timing. And buying the Dons is new owner or current owner now, Fernando Gonzalez Sr. A kid who was born in Mexico but moved to the United States moved to Los Angeles at age 12. His family moved to Los Angeles from Mexico. Mr. Gonzalez was taught the values of hard work and persevering and looking out for others and never giving up, never quitting, not making excuses, and all about putting together a family. That was the one thing when Fernando Gonzalez Sr. bought the franchise in '96. He wanted to create a family atmosphere that everybody is just part of not only his family but the Don's family. He wanted to bring back the glory years that Dean Allen had, in the 50s. He knew this was going to be tough sledding when he bought the franchise in '96. But he was willing to lay down the groundwork and the foundation of what Don's football was going to be going into the future and to now. So, he was one of those rags to riches stories. A poor kid, born in Mexico, family moved to LA when he was 12, but never forgot about the values that his parents and his family installed of, about hard work, looking out for people, caring for people, and always try to be the best. And in '96, the groundwork of the LA Dons football coming back to existence was about to begin. In '96, his first hire was a coach named John Smart, an offensive assistant from BYU. John Smart was now the head coach of the LA Dons. You know, he was a coach that, you know, no one knew much about, but we knew he was a tough man. You know, he could be very hard on players, and it could be very demanding. But it's like he always said, it could be worth it. And the players at BYU, this is a fun segment I do, y'all. And the players at BYU understand that. So they had to get to work. And he would get to, and on his first team, and on John Smart's team, he would have two cornerstones of the franchise that would shape Don's football of what it is today. Out of the expansion draft, Nathan Smith, coming over from the Hawaii Kings, and the first round draft pick out of Stanford, a running back named Derek Vance. Yeah, those two guys, they call the co-founders of the Dons coming back to existence in '96, and it was just really a fun time. But they knew that they had to get to work, and right from jump, training camp started. The grueling sweat, the grueling heat, and the sweat and the hard work was commencing in '96 training camp. I remember John Smart, he had no mercy. I mean, he was just working them. He just working them to death, man. I mean, back then, that's what training camp was. 2 days. It was hard. It was hitting, physical, in the heat. You know, it was just, oh man. But that first year turned out to be a pretty good year for the Dons in all cases. And starting off '96, the first game of that season, starting off will be one of the teams that left LA, the team that's in their division, now formerly known as the Los Angeles Rams, now the St. Louis Rams, on a Sunday night in LA Coliseum. A record crowd, over 100,000 to watch this game. And on a Sunday night, the Dons put on an epic show. Like they did against the Brooklyn Dodgers in the All-American Football Conference and the Iowa Kings' first game in the NFL 51, the Dons would do the same against the Rams in '96, winning their first game in primetime, winning it 35-24 over the Rams. There it is. Yep, a Sunday night matchup, and ended in favor of the Dons. In the next week, they would travel to Hawaii on a Thursday night to take on the Kings, who was now in Hawaii. And the Dons will win that game by 10. All right, the Dons, after the Kings, they would start 4-0, including a win in Columbus, Ohio against the Bulldogs. Actually, they would start 5-0. Actually, 6-0. They start off a good 6-0 before falling to the 49ers. But a game against the Houston Oilers, they would beat them 27-20. Their first ever meeting. And the Dons will finish the 1996 season 9-7, but failed to make the playoffs. Yeah, that was successful. Got it. What's up? Oh, that's what he said. He like, don't. Oh shit. All right, that was the '96 season. That was pretty much a success for the Dons, even though they didn't make the playoffs. That was a successful year, but the next two, not so much. All right, '97, they will finish 6-10. And then the following year, In 98, they would go to 7-9. But in 1999, the Dons would pick it back up. Their first ever trip to West Virginia, the Dons would dominate the Spartans. And the Dons would be up and down early parts of the 99 season before traveling to Tennessee to take on the undefeated Tennessee Titans, who were having an outstanding storybook season. Yeah, they were having a storybook year that year, and the Dons went in there. They used to be the Houston Oilers, by the way, and now they're the Tennessee Titans. But they went in there in Nashville, and they just took apart the Titans. And just like that, with Carlos Montana, the quarterback, the Dons would destroy the Titans 44-7. But the next game against the Jaguars would be even more dramatic. Yeah, the two best teams in the AFC that year. They took down one in Nashville, and then Jacksonville come to the Coliseum on a Sunday night. And that game was crazy. Yep, the Jaguars had control until Carlos Montana and the Dons fought all the way back, and the game went into overtime. Yeah, that was a wild game, but the Dons stood together and found a way to win that game, and it was on a Sunday night in the Coliseum. And just like that, the Dons will win the game in overtime with a field goal, beating the Jaguars 30-27. And then they beat the Ravens, the first ever meeting between them, 28-23. Derek Vance had a real good game. But they would kind of falter down the stretch. They limped into the playoffs against the Washington football team, where the team season would end. And the magical ride that they had in 99 will come to an abrupt halt. The 2000s. And in 2000, the Dons got off to a rocky start, losing the first game to the Niners before winning against the Kings and against the Raiders and the Broncos on a Monday night. But they finished 7-9 in 2000. And in 2001, the team reached a low. They finished 5-11. And before 2002 start, scandal hit. John Smart was suspended for the first 3 games for violation of rules of betting on games and violating rules. But he was only suspended for 3 games. Drew Skipper coached the first 3, going 2-1, beating the Chargers in San Diego and the Rams in LA on a Monday night, before falling to the Kings in Hawaii 35-24. And in John Smart's return, the Thunder came. The first ever meeting between the Thunder and the Dons would beat the Thunder 42-10. But after that, it all went downhill. And once again, problems and scandal once again hitting John Smart, and Mr. Gonzalez had no choice but to relieve John Smart of his duties. Yeah, John Smart never really could understand how the pro game went. He felt like, if all the players just do things his way and not question his decisions, they would be fine. It would work if he had the right kind of players. He had some talented players, but he just couldn't get along with certain players, couldn't get along with certain coaches. He was always kind of snippy at the media. I mean, and then the scandal hit. He was betting on games, and not only that, just all kinds of stuff that just wasn't right. Like off the field stuff wasn't right with John Smart. And this is a coach, you talking about, and coaches talking about players should not do this and this and be accountable, but here's the head coach. Here's the head coach that's doing all the stuff that he's telling his players not to do, but he's doing it. And on top of that, he's always going at it with players, and particularly with Derek Vance and Terrence Wills, who was drafted in '99. I forgot. Yeah, Terrence Wills, who was drafted in '99, and Carlos Montana, and he just, and he always felt like just because he had the title head coach, he felt like he could berate players and people and just talk down to anybody that didn't agree with him or his philosophy of what he tried to do, and it just didn't work out, and Boss had to make a move. And on top of that, they hired Jim Floyd in '01, and because the general manager that he wanted, that he brought in, John Smart did, just was not cutting it, and he got fired, and he never spoke to Boss that whole the 2.5 years. The last 2.5 years, he didn't speak to Fernando Gonzalez because Mr. Gonzalez fired the general manager that he brought in when he took over the franchise, and when they came back in '96, and it was just uneasiness with the franchise and with the team and with the players and everything, and just felt like just had to walk on eggshells every day. And it got to the point where Mr. Gonzalez said, enough of this. I'm gonna have to let him go. And that's what happened. The teams fought, but Drew Skipper came back in the Broncos game, and the Dons won that one. But the team's fortune declined, even though they won the last 2 games of the season. Yeah, but back-to-back 5-11 seasons. That never happened in Don. I don't think they ever had back-to-back double-digit seasons with losing records. Double-digit losing seasons. That never really happened in Don's history. So, now with Mr. Gonzalez, the owner, feeling the heat, and everyone's saying he's probably the worst owner in the league, it was just, man, what are we going to do to get back to the top? And in 2003, that would all change. So now going into 2003 season, Mr. Gonzalez Sr. was desperately looking for a coach who could bring back the glory years, under the glory years with Dean Allen, and some cases John Hall. And in February 2003, he would find that man. His name, James White, and the first African-American head coach in franchise history, and a man that worked under not only Tony Dungy, fun segment, but also Jack McNeil with the Barcelona Dragons. He was an unknown, unproven commodity, but he was young and enthusiastic. And unlike John Smart, didn't have an ego, didn't have controversy, a great guy, great mentor, and was brimming with enthusiasm to bring the Dons back to greatness. So, when Coach White first got hired, everybody thinking, okay, what is Mr. Gonzalez, what is Jim Floyd and Mr. Gonzalez doing? Are they sure they know what they're doing? I'm like, does Jim Floyd know the game? Do they know anything about the NFL game? I mean, this Coach White guy, okay, they said he worked on, but he was in NFL Europe too. So it's like, who's this James White guy? And even players try to figure out. I mean, even players try to do research on him, because, he was unproven, an unknown. But think about it. Dean Allen, even though he was under Paul Allen, he was an unknown. No one knew who he was. He won an NFL championship. So, but then again, you know, it was just like, man, are the Dons ever going to be great again? And I remember one of the reporters asked Brian Casey at the time. He says, "Do you think the Dons will ever be great? And are you think they're ever going to win any championship at this level?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. At the rate this going, I say no. But we're going to wait and see. We're going to wait and see what happens and let the chips fall where they may." Just like that, Coach White had the job. When he first took over, he came in and just gave a real simple message. He said, I remember Coach White came into the team. I remember he had one schedule in one hand, he had a lighter in the other. And he said, "Guys, you see the 0-2 schedule from last season?" He took the lighter, put it to the 2002 schedule, and set it on fire. And he says, "That's over. That's over and done with. These are the new Dons, and the new Dons are going to do everything the right way. We're going to play defense the right way. We're going to play offense the right way. We're going to do our job. We're going to be professional. We're going to be encouraging one another. We're going to be accountable for one another. We're all in this together. There was no one person. There's no one person that's gonna do the whole thing. It takes a collective group, and we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way to get that job done as a group, and we're going to win a championship as long as I'm the coach. And the only way we're going to do that is we all got to be on the same page. All got to be on one accord, and we all have to just look out for one another and be accountable for one another, and never turn your back on each other." And that was just a simple message. And guys, you could just tell, guys bought in. But he needed to do some work because he didn't have a first, second, or even a third round pick. He didn't have a first, second, or third round pick because of the scandal, because of the betting scandal with John Smart and all the other off the field nonsense that he put the franchise through, that he couldn't get it. But he had some gems, and Jim Floyd drafted some great guys when he first took over in 01. Even though Terrence Wills was there, but in 01, he drafted Jose Diaz, Johnny Miller, and then in 02, Al Williams, Devon Means, and then this 03 draft, he drafted Dwayne White, 6'8" receiver, one of the best receivers in the game, Hall of Famer, and he drafted Mark Dixon, and a quarterback that slipped all the way to the fourth round. That would be our franchise. That would turn out to be one of the franchise's greatest quarterback of all time in Warwick Locker. And he got two offensive linemen from NFL Europe, and John Toy and Frank Hernandez, because he did coach in NFL Europe a little bit. So that worked out for him. And 03, let's see what happens. And Coach White's first game was against the Seattle Seahawks. And the first game, it was evident. The players played with enthusiasm, played with a lot of intensity and a lot of heart and togetherness. And they beat the Seahawks 37-25. The team would be up and down until they faced the Pittsburgh Steelers in the regular afternoon game. And in '03, by the way, had no night games. And against the Steelers, the Dons would beat them 31-10. Now, yes, they had their struggles, they had their downs, but in Week 15 against San Francisco, the Dons did something that would be a trend that will continue throughout the decade in the Coach White era. That game against the Niners, they have not beaten the Niners since 1970. And it's been a long time. And I remember before the game, the day before the game. I remember the day before the game, Coach White called in Vance, Nate, and Wills into the office. And he says, I want to show y'all something. And they looking around like, okay, what's he going to show us? They were looking around like, what's he going to show us? And he pulled out the jersey that MiketheLAdonsfan wears. And he said, you see this jersey? And they all look like, whoa. Yeah, Coach, that would be neat. That would be neat for one game. That'd be neat for one game. And one day, I hope that team would go to that jersey as a current jersey. And then he says, we're gonna wear these jerseys Sunday against that NorCal team. They all looked at each other like, wearing them this Sunday? Oh yeah. And I promise you, we're gonna win that game by wearing that jersey. So in pregame, they go to the game Coliseum. So we go to the game before the pregame. They head to the game in the Coliseum. And all we see was the white pants with the red lining. Okay, all right. We put them on. He said, put those pants on. So put the pants on. We're out. We're warming up. We got the helmets on. They had the helmets on, but we didn't have the jerseys. We just had but they had the white pants with the red lining. And we're just warming up, and and guys kind of like getting startled, like, okay, So Nate and Vance was like, hey, calm down, relax, we got this. Just don't panic, don't overreact. We got this. So we played it cool, nothing but we played it cool. Like, they didn't overreact, thank God. But when the warm-ups were over, they went back to the locker room, and then we see those jerseys that he showed Wills, Vance, and Nate all in the locker room. And the players just got pumped up. He says, hey, put those jerseys on. We're going to win this game. And that was it. And they just put the jerseys on, and boy, that was a great time and a great game. It ended up being a great game for the LA Dons. And that was the turning point. That was one of the turning points in Dons football history, to going back to being, or going to where this franchise is at now, as being one of the greatest franchises in sports history. All right, so that game was the launching point of the Coach White era, being one of the greatest eras in Dons history. Like that, Week 15 was a showcase. And in those jerseys, the Dons would dominate the 49ers and beat them 27-10. And they would win their last two games over the Rams and Spartans to finish the 03 season 8-8. Now, yes, they did go 8-8, but they showed promise. And it was one of the biggest single season turnarounds in franchise history since 65. Since 65, when the Dons were 4-10 4-10 in 64, and they turned it around, went 10-3-1 in 65. But in 04, things would get better. Things would get better because in 04, they got Byron Walker, Matt Malutu, Bob Morris, and I forgot to mention in 03, they also got Leroy Spence for Florida State in 03. But when they brought those guys in 04, Matt Malutu, Byron Walker, and Bob Morris, I'm thinking, oh, wow, they're close to being a great team. But in 04, the Dons went 9-7. One record better of 03. They finished 9-7 and went to the playoff bowl. But highlighted of that season is the Dons finally conquering the Shamrocks on a Monday night in the LA Coliseum, beating them 37-10. Now, yes, the Dons were still a young team, very young team, but they were learning how to come together, and they were learning how to win. And they were getting faster and better as time was going on. But in the playoff bowl, and they crushed the Rams on a Sunday night, 51-7. Another highlight. And a 39-9 victory over the Saints. But in the playoff bowl, they would crush the Jaguars, 45-17. Yeah, that 04 season, that was now, wait a minute. The Dons may be coming back into the light. We may have seen our second coming of Dean Allen, but maybe better. And man, could this be? He was right. The second coming of Dean Allen was here. And in 2005, the greatest season in Don's history was about to begin. 2005, one of the greatest, probably the greatest season in Don's history since 57, and their final season ever as the home team in the LA Coliseum. But they started that season in Orlando. But before that, two new pieces came to the Dons in 05. First one, Kevin Knight, a guy who had some trouble in Orlando, or so they thought. They said Kevin Knight was a troublemaker, was a locker room problem, a trouble guy, but I don't know what they were talking about, but he was a great guy when he came to us. And the other one of the most colorful guys in franchise history, a big, chubby, 5'9" fullback in Mike Jones. Yeah, 20-year-old. Yeah. I'm like, this guy should still be in college. What is he doing here? But I tell you what, when he put on that shoulder pads and helmet, he was something special. In the first game in Orlando, the Dons were also showing the world how special they are. Going into overtime in Orlando, the Dons would show the Thunder in the world what Dons football was truly about. We were tied at 14. They had a 14-7 lead going into the fourth quarter, but our guys never gave up. They kept playing. They kept battling. And Warwick Locker and Derek Vance was doing their thing. And we scored a late touchdown in that game. Locker threw it to McCord, the slot receiver, to tie the game. And that was just to symbolize of what Don's football, I think that play to tie the game was going to symbolize what Don's football was going to be that whole year and pretty much throughout the decade. And in overtime, Derek Vance took it over. And then Nigel Groh, the kicker, kicked the game-winning field goal. We won 17-14 in overtime. And boy, that was a great feeling. And the next week on a Sunday night in St. Louis, the Dons would finally win in St. Louis for the first time for the first time in St. Louis since 1970 when they beat the Cardinals, and they will win at the Rams for the first time since the 60s, beating them 44-10 on a Sunday night on the Madden 04. But one of the blemish, a tie with the reigning defending NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles in Mike Jones' debut. Oh yeah, that game. I mean, Philly pretty much had control, especially in the second half, but our guys kept fighting, kept battling, and we tied it up. But unfortunately, neither team could break the tie, so the game ended in a tie. And just like that, the Dons went on a tear, beating the 49ers at home 29-0. Hold on one second. All right, they beat down the Niners 29-0 before a classic game against Washington. Yeah, when we played Washington, Joe Gibbs coming to town. They were building. They were trying to get back to their glory years, but our guys, was coming together, and we just knew that we had to make a play, and they were driving towards our end zone, and those four downs in our red again, they entered our red zone, but those four downs was legendary. The first pass that Mark Brunell threw was incomplete. Second one, Jose Diaz sacked him. The third one, Matt Malutu with another sack, and then it came down to fourth down, and Leroy Spence, had him since 03, made one of the biggest plays, caught the game-clinching interception, and the Coliseum went crazy, and we won the game 21-16. And after that, the Dons would do something that they've never, ever done in franchise history. Going 4 straight games on the road and winning all 4. First, the trip started in Dallas. Yep, we went to Dallas and we beat the Cowboys 48-20 in our first ever and only win in Texas Stadium. And our first ever win in Dallas, to be honest with you. Our first ever win in Dallas. That was great. And we beat them 48-20. And then the next game at Tempe, Arizona, against the division rival Cardinals, the Dons would dominate that game, with Mike Jones and Derek Vance leading the way, both going over 100. Yep, and it was hot, humid in Arizona, but those guys played so well. And then in Tennessee, Nashville, they would dominate the Titans 38-7. And then highlighted by Devon Means' pick 6. And then they conclude the trip up in Northern California against the 49ers. And for the first time since 69, they would sweep the season series from the Niners. And Coach White's first ever win in San Francisco. And the Dons' first win in San Francisco since 69. Yeah. That was an amazing feeling. That was such an amazing feeling. And wearing the Hollywood Mexican silver jerseys that day. And we beat the Niners 51-24. And we completed the 4-game road trip 4-0. They went 4-0 in their 4-game road trip. Something that's never been done nor since in Don's franchise history. But the biggest game was on Monday night, week 11, against the undefeated Indianapolis Colts. They were undefeated. We were undefeated. But they had one of the best. They had Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Adrian James. And we had some pretty good players in Warwick Locker, Derek Vance, Terrence Wills, Dwayne White. It was build up to be this star-studded Monday night matchup, but it turned out to be a rout. And that rout ended in the Dons' favor, shutting out the Colts 35-0. The first of 5 shutouts in the '05 Dons campaign. And I remember Coach White said before the season started, it's good, in particular talking to the defense. He says it's good to get pick sixes and force turnovers and score touchdowns, but hey, if you want to be one of the greatest defenses ever, get 5 shutouts. Let's get 5 shutouts. And the next week against Arizona, they would sweep the Cardinals 37-0. Their second shutout, back-to-back shutouts, before going up to the Pacific Northwest and falling to the Seattle Seahawks, their only loss of the season. Yeah, it's always tough playing up there. Crowd is loud. I mean, you really can't hear yourself think or talk. You just have to play through. And that day, we made a lot of mental errors, a lot of mental mistakes that cost us. But the next game and beyond, we wasn't losing no more. All right, after that loss to the Seahawks, they faced the Rams. And this game proved to be tougher than they thought, because the Rams had a 14-3 halftime lead. And I remember at halftime, I remember the players just saying, "Hey guys, we got to do our job. You think the Rams are just gonna lay down? They're not laying down. We got to play, and we got to step up and make big plays." And I think the guys just came out in agreement and said, "Hey, let's get back to what we do best, and that's play Dons football." And that's what they did in the second half. And in the second half, the Dons rallied and tied the game at 17, heading into overtime. Their third overtime game of the season and their last. But this one was dramatic. In the final play of the overtime game, Warwick Locker once again would hit McCord. This one to end the game. And just like that, the Rams' playoff chances was over, and the Dons would sweep the Rams for the first time since '69, just like the Niners. And then the Dons would roll through their last 4 games, including a 59-14 romping of the Seahawks, to earn their first division title in 35 years. And Coach White became 2005 NFL Coach of the Year. Derek Vance was league MVP. And Don's fullback Mike Jones was Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jose Diaz was Defensive Player of the Year. Warwick Locker was Offensive Player of the Year. All the accolades. But now it was time for the playoffs. And the Dons were making their first NFC playoff appearance since '99. But against Carolina, they entered the playoffs in style, dominating the Panthers 41-0 and earning their first trip to the NFC Championship game in 35 years. And in the NFC Championship game against Seattle, the final home game ever for the Dons in the LA Coliseum, it was an intense struggle with the Seahawks, the third meeting. The Seahawks and Dons, it was a low-scoring game. And then the Dons made some plays on a reverse play to Dwayne White, who scored a touchdown in the third quarter to give the Dons a 10-6 lead. And then in the fourth quarter, Mike Jones, the fullback, extended it to 17-6. That game, that was a hard-fought battle in an intense game. I mean, man, it was just like, whew. It was gonna like, man, whoever survived this one, man, is gonna be a champion. After being down 6-3 at halftime, they took a 17-6 lead, and then Seattle scored to make it 17-13. And Seattle got the ball back and was driving. But the defense once again made a stand. Just like the Washington game, but neither team turned the ball over in this game. But just like the Washington game, we had to make a big stop. And we made some big stops. We sacked Hasselback. We pretty much held Sean Alexander in check in that game. And it came down to fourth down. And on fourth down, the Dons defense will make a play for the ages in their final chapter in the LA Coliseum. And just like that, the Dons were going back to the Megabowl for the first time since 1970. I remember after that fourth down stop, the LA Coliseum just erupted in a frenzy. I mean, it was the last game ever and in the Coliseum, and we made a big stop. And Derek Vance later on got the first down to clinch the NFC Championship game. And knowing that we're going back to the Mega Bowl for the first time since 1970, it was just a greater feeling. And boy, that year, it was a culmination of what Coach White has done in his 3 seasons with the Dons. And now we're going to the Mega Bowl, and now try to win a championship, to win another championship. 2006 Mega Bowl in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio against the upstart Dragons, who were formerly known as the Hawaii Kings / Iowa Kings, moved to Albuquerque, and the Dragons, formerly known as the Barcelona Dragons, would claim the rights of the Kings to become the Albuquerque Dragons. They were now in the 06 Mega Bowl. And in the Mega Bowl, the Dons will put on a performance for the ages. Derek Vance, who would score 3 touchdowns, going 206 yards, the most yards rushing ever in Mega Bowl history, and 3 touchdowns, the most ever in Mega Bowl history, would dominate the Dragons. And Mike Jones, who went over 100 yards and scored 2 touchdowns, and Warwick Locker, setting a Mega Bowl record with 13 straight completions. And the defense, forcing 4 turnovers, and for the first time ever in Mega Bowl history, a shutout happened. And the Dons' 5th shutout of the season, most in the Mega Bowl era. And the Dons would dominate the Dragons 55-0 to earn the franchise's first ever Mega Bowl championship. And Coach White becoming the first African American head coach ever to win the Mega Bowl. That was the greatest night, February 12th, 2006. Dons fans will remember that day forever as long as they live. The day that the Dons win their first ever Mega Bowl championship in franchise history. And they did it in San Antonio in the Alamo Dome. Derek Vance was the league MVP and Mega Bowl MVP. Mike Jones had a good game. The defense was dominant and stout. Warwick Locker was efficient, completing 13 straight completions. Dwayne White was just making plays. And it was just an all-around great performance ever seen until the 2024 Mega Bowl. But This was the original. I mean, one of the greatest performance by one team ever in Megabowl history, dominance, and the first ever shutout ever in Megabowl history, and winning their first world title in 48 years since 1957. It was just, man, one of the greatest feelings in the world that it just doesn't replace that. And just like that, the Dons were finally Mega Bowl world champions. And man, Coach White, what he did in his third year, 3 years since taking over in '03, it's just nothing short of remarkable. I mean, to bring the Dons' first ever Mega Bowl championship in their first world title since '57, it was just, I mean, excuse me, the testament of what he built and what they set out to accomplish, and that is to be a championship contender every year, and just doing it the right way and doing it professionally, and just, man, just making their mark in the league. And just like that, the Dons prove that they can win a championship and prove that they are amongst one of the NFL elites in the 2000s. And it was Nathan Smith's last game, by the way, the 2006 Mega Bowl. 2006, a new home, the Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena. But the results and the standard remained the same. Opening night against the Minnesota Vikings, the Dons will beat the Vikings 27-22. And I mean, that opening night game, banner night, to reveal that banner and to see the '06 Mega Bowl next to the 1957 NFL Championship. That was one of the greatest things. It was in the Mega Bowl. I mean, not in the Rose Bowl, the Dons' new home, and we beat the Dragons in that Mega Bowl. But that's what made it special. And we went out and we beat the Vikings. Yep, they beat the Vikings 27-22. They beat the Raiders 28-6. They would roll through the games, and then the rematch with the Dragons, that they would defeat 26-10, and then they will finish the '06 season 11-5, highlighted with a 42-0 drubbing of the Broncos, and Week 10 wearing the Hollywood Mexican red against the Seattle Seahawks, beating them 44-20. They would win the NFC West again in '06, but in the Super Wild Card, they would fall short to the New York Football Giants, 20-17. And in 2007, more of the same. They win the division. They beat the upstart Triangles 51-24. Warwick Locker had a big day. And Warwick Locker now was starting to become that franchise caliber quarterback really since we drafted him in the 4th round. He's been that franchise caliber quarterback, but it was '07 when you really see him taking over and emerge. The Dons would roll, including a big time afternoon game in Pittsburgh, where they would beat the Steelers 38-14 in Pittsburgh, in their first ever win in Pittsburgh since the Dean Allen era. And they would finish the '07 season 13-3. And in the wild card, Super Wild Card against the Washington football team, it was more dominance. After being down 13-0 at halftime, or was it 10? After being down 10-0 at halftime, the Dons rolled in the second half and scored 48 unanswered points in the second half to dominate Washington and advance to the divisional round 48-13 over Washington to advance to the divisional round. But in Green Bay, once again, the Dons will fall short of the Megabowl. I mean, yeah, 2 years in a row now. After that magical season 05, they are showing dominant. They've been dominant, but now 2 years in a row, no appearance in the Megabowl, let alone a conference championship game. I think now they wonder, okay, coach, are you going to lead us back to the Megabowl? And in 08, the Dons once again was dominant again. Once again winning the NFC West, going 13-2 with wins over the Falcons and a Sunday night win over the New England Patriots in Week 4. And another Sunday night win over the Dallas Cowboys in Week 14. But they did tie with the Shamrocks. And they did roll through the 2008 season. Warwick Locker winning the 2008 league MVP. But in the divisional round, they were stopped short by their division rival Cardinals. And that loss would fuel the Dons going into the 2009 season. 2009, the Dons were back at it again. Now with Derek Vance retired, now the responsibility is on their two best young players, Mike Jones and Warwick Locker. But the Dons were confident, and Terrence Wills, who also retired. Now Dwayne White was now the one. But he had another tag team partner, Tyrone Richards. But the 09 Dons standard and their standards of dominance and winning remain the same. Their first trip to Canada, taking on the Montreal Machine, and would dominate them 56-10. And the Dons would roll in the first 5 games, highlighted with a trip up to Indianapolis in Lucas Oil Stadium against the Indianapolis Colts, where the Dons will once again dominate Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts on a Sunday night. Yeah, that game was unbelievable. Warwick Locker was on his game. I mean, the whole entire team that night was on their game. And we won the game. We dominated them. And they beat the Indianapolis Colts. But in Minnesota, the Dons will fall short, losing 21-14 to the Vikings. But the next week, on a Sunday night, against division rival Cardinals, the Dons would dominate the Cardinals 37-3, led by a performance by Warwick Locker, who threw for some touchdowns and earning a level of measured revenge for what the Cardinals did to him in the divisional round. But the next game would be the highlight and the classic that would highlight one of the classic games of the 09 season in Seattle. Yeah, that game, that's on my old channel, by the way. It's 2 parts to that. The Dons were down 21-6. They were down 21-6 in the second half. And, it looked like Seattle was just going to run away with it. But our guys, they stepped up. They fought, made big plays. And late in the game, Warwick Locker would find Dwayne White for the game-clinching touchdown and a victory in Seattle. And just like that, the Dons continue to roll. And they would beat the Rams 42-0. And they would roll through the rest of the 09 season, finishing 14-2 and heading into the playoffs against the upstart Orlando Thunder in the Super Wild Card. And in that game, the Dons would dominate the upstart Thunder 48-10, led by Warwick Locker and the defense. Yeah, we really showed our experience against that team, and they really showed their experience against that team, and they really did one heck of a job. And they won the game. And the next week against the Vikings, the Dons got their get back. That was a hard-fought game. Brett Favre and... Hold on one second. That game against Minnesota, Brett Favre was really good. But, we get some turnovers on him because he was a gunslinger. He likes to throw that ball. But if you pick off one of his passes, hey, our chances are good. And we forced some turnovers in that game. And it wasn't easy. But we got the job done and we won the game. And just like that, the Dons advanced to New Orleans for the 2009 NFC Championship game. In the NFC Championship game against New Orleans, the Dons were dominant, taking a 24-0 lead. A 24-0 halftime lead before the Saints made a little rally, but the Dons put an end to it, and they would advance to the Megabowl for the second time since 2005, and they did it on the road. Coach White's first road playoff game in his career, and the Dons' first road playoff win since 1970, the last time they won the NFC Championship game on the road. That game in New Orleans was a testament to Coach White's work. His first road playoff game on the road, a first road playoff win on the road, I should say. And boy, those guys came out. They were just ready for this game. The crowd was loud. I mean, New Orleans, if you go to the Superdome and them fans, they would be loud. They'd be proud, especially if they were winning. But we went in there. We just said, not on our watch. We kept them sitting on their hands. Yes, they made a rally, but we withstand it, and we controlled it the rest of the way. And now we were on to Miami. And the opponent in Miami for the 2010 Megabowl is a familiar one. Don Shamrocks. First time since the 71 Megabowl. A rivalry still brewing since the mid-late 60s and early 70s. And now, once again, is put back in the spotlight. And in the NFL world, the football world was going to watch. The Shamrocks, Dons, man, it's one of those games that it's like, man, two superpowers going head to head. It's like Batman versus Superman, Celtics, Lakers, Yankees, Dodgers, just or sometimes, some cases, Cowboys, Steelers in the 70s. It's like, and that one time in the 90s, it's like two mega powers going head to head for a championship. And yes, there was some still deep-seated feelings of hatred with the Shamrocks, even though we don't hate them we don't hate them off the field, but we hate them when we go against them, and they hate us when they go against us. So the 2010 Mega Bowl was the perfect platform for the Dons and Shamrocks for once again to come together and try to beat each other's ass to win the championship. And boy, that game in Miami against the Shamrocks was a great example of what football is supposed to be. And these two superpower rivals just went at it, and boy, it was great. And from the jump, the Shamrocks took a 3-0 lead before Mike Jones scored a touchdown. before Mike Jones scored a touchdown before the second quarter starts, 5 yards. Then the second quarter, the Dons took a 10-7 lead. No, 10-3 lead. The Dons took a 10-3 lead. Shamrocks kick another field goal. And the Dons would take advantage. But they would take advantage of Shamrock's mistakes in key situations like this one. Now, I remember, their defensive tackle jumped offside. And we snapped the ball, flag throw. It was a free play. Richards got open. And thank goodness he was wide open. I mean, he was wide open. Coverage was blown. He caught it. Touchdown. We got an 11-point lead going into the half. But in the third quarter, the Shamrocks will make their adjustments and take the lead. Yeah. I mean, we knew going into that game that the Shamrocks, they weren't just going to lay down. We knew they weren't going to lay down. They were going to make a run. They were going to come back, try to make a game of it, and they did. And we give them credit for that. But in the fourth quarter, the Dons showed the Shamrocks what the Dons football is all about, and showing them why the proud sons of California always fight like Dons. Fight like fiends when times get tough. In the fourth quarter, we driving, and Dwayne White made a great catch. And then Ron Rodgers took a 15-yard touchdown. But the Shamrocks answered back. And then the drive that would live in Don's lore. Once again, Warwick Locker was a perfect 5 for 5 on that drive on passes. And that fifth one connected to his main man, Dwayne White, 10-yard touchdown. And now, here we go. Shamrocks got the ball, and now they're driving to score and try to not only take the lead, but try to win the Megabowl. And they're driving. And I'm on the sideline. I'm thinking, come on, defense. Please stop these guys. I'm so sick of these. I'm sick of these Shamrocks always trying to one-up us in a Megabowl. We got to beat these guys in this game. We need this one. We need this one. And I remember at the 15-yard line, or was it 20-yard line? At the 20-yard line, they're trying to get it into the end zone. They're on the plus side of the field, 20-yard line. I remember Franklin dropped back. And Devon Means, like he did in the 06 Mega Bowl, closing it out, preserving that shutout, he caught that interception to preserve our second championship. And just like that, the Dons finally prevail against the Shamrocks, 31-27. And Warwick Locker ended up being Mega Bowl MVP with 22 of 28, 294 yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks. And the defense forced 3 turnovers, forcing 2 interceptions. One by Byron Walker, Jose Diaz sack fumble on Franklin, which Kevin Knight recovered that fumble, and Devon Means game-clinching interception to preserve the win in the Dons' second Mega Bowl championship in franchise history. And in Coach White becoming the first African-American head coach ever to win 2 Mega Bowls. And the Dons becoming the first team to deliver the Shamrocks' first ever Mega Bowl loss. That was just one of the great feelings ever. One of the great feelings ever in Don's history. And it was on Valentine's Day. That made it extra special. And man, to beat the Shamrocks, and we wanted to beat them where we always wanted to beat them, in the Mega Bowl. And to finally get one on them in the Mega Bowl, was one of the sweetest victories ever in Don's history. And it did a lot for not the Don's organization, but for the city of Los Angeles. And really for the state of California, that we finally beat the Shamrocks in the Megabowl. And we beat them in Miami. And we always said we brought Hollywood to Miami. And 2 times. We just kept saying 2 times. And finally we beat the Shamrocks. And that second time, we beat the Shamrocks in 3 tries. The 3 times they beat us in Megabowl, and we finally got one on them. It's just a great feeling. It was just one of the great feelings that this franchise has endured. And yep, in the mid-late 2000s was one of the greatest eras in Don's football history. 2 Megabowls and 5 straight division titles. And a victory over the Shamrocks in the Megabowl. 2010s. The 2010 season featured the Dons once again being defending world champions. And opening night against Orlando, they raised another banner. Next to the 05 and along with the 57 team, the 09 team took its place in history on the banner. But their opponent, the Orlando Thunder, gave them a fight and a hint of what the 2010s were going to be like. Yeah, that first game against Orlando, they really played us tough. They played us tough, and they took us to overtime. And it was just a really battle. We had to fight, scrap, and claw to get that win. And just like that, the game went to overtime. But once again, the Dons persevered and won the game. On a game-winning touchdown in overtime, the Dons beat the Thunder, and they would finish the 2010 season 12-4. But, like in 08, they were one and done. This time by the upstart Spartans in the Super Wild Card. But in 2011, the Dons were making their last run to win another championship. They finished 14-2 in another division title. They beat the Giants in the divisional round and advanced to the NFC Championship game against the Orlando Thunder. They had a 14-7 lead, and then things took an unexpected turn in the second half. All right. The Dons were up 14-7 until the Thunder running back broke off a 67-yard touchdown to tie the game, and then another touchdown by the same back. They took the lead, and they just seized the momentum. The Dons fought back gallantly until the biggest play for the Thunder submitted that signified the end of the Dons' run in the 2010s. I remember it was 3rd and long. Travis Campbell dropped back. He threw a big pass, and this is Devon Means. Devon Means never gets beat on one-on-one. And I remember his name was Dawkins at the time. I remember Dawkins went one-on-one, and Campbell threw a pretty ball. It was, and then when Dawkins caught it, I'm like, he caught it and he ran all the way to the end zone, and the Rose Bowl was silent. It was not a sound. You could hear a pin drop. in the Rose Bowl. Or you could hear a rat pissing on cotton. That's how quiet the Rose Bowl was when Dawkins caught that long touchdown pass on Devon Means to pretty much end our season and send them to the Megabowl and pretty much ended our championship hopes. And that was it. You could tell the run was in. The run was coming to an end. The end was near. And just like that, no more trips to the Megabowl for the Dons, at least for a decade. In 2012, the Dons came back with a renewed focus by beating the Montreal Machine 45-0 against their former offensive mentor, Al Rubias, the late Al Rubias, who used to be for us. But they finished the season 10-5-1, highlighted with a win over New England on a Sunday night in New England. But after that, the Dons failed to recapture the magic, and they would lose to an upstart Seattle team at home by a point. But they finished 10-5-1. But the only postseason game they played was the playoff bowl at home against the Bengals, and Coach White's final game and his final season. Yeah, that year, you could tell, 2012, you could sense something was a little different. I mean, the Dons, they were still good, but they were not like the team that they used to be, dominant and, just always coming out. But they did win 10 games, but it's just like the same juice was kind of missing. But you get a sense that Coach White now was ready to step down. I mean, he coached the Dons for 10 seasons, brought 2 Megabowls, and won 2 Megabowls, won a lot of division titles, won 7 straight division titles, and this is his second playoff bowl game, and the players wanted to make sure that he go out the right way because he was a great man. He did everything the right way. I mean, he was always a joy to be around. He always was great with the players. He was great with the media. It was a true family atmosphere with Coach White. I mean, it was just, we were all together. And he believed that family, togetherness, brotherhood, unity, and that's what he brought. And he never yelled at his players, got in their faces, and none of that. He was just always calm, especially in tough situations. Always calm. Always just operating as a smooth operator. But, he was a great man, great leader, great friend, great teacher, great mentor. Most importantly, a great coach. One of the great coaches that we had in our sport. And the playoff bowl against the Bengals was the last game. And against the Bengals, the Dons once again muster up a dominating performance, beating them 44-20 and sending Coach White out on a great note. You could tell I think that game against the Bengals in the playoff bowl was the last straw, was the last game. It signaled the end of the Dons run. It's been a great run for 10 seasons. Had a lot of success. The division titles, the 2 Mega Bowl championships, the fun times, the NFC championship games. I mean, this was probably one of the greatest eras that the Dons football has ever witnessed until the Manny Reyes regime came. But this was the start of one of the best eras in Dons football history, and one of the greatest runs in NFL history in Mike's Fun segment. And the Dons and Coach White and those players will always earn a special place in the sport for what they've done, especially in the mid-late 2000s. And Coach White was going to be missed. Just, man, we just got to find the second coming of Coach White. So, man, the Coach White era, one of the best runs, best eras, one of the best eras in Don's football history. And boy, it was a treasure. And just like that, Coach White was done. 2013, Larry Hazel was now in charge of taking over for the legendary Coach White, and with new players, with all the old ones like Mike Jones, Dwayne White, Ward Clocker, now all retired in the history with Coach White. Larry Hazel was now the task leading the Dons, or continuing the tradition with new players of winning championships. Larry Hazel, all right, a fixture from the Spartans. Larry Hazel was a young up and coming coach, trying to replicate what Coach White did. Yeah, he came over from West Virginia, and we held out. We had some hope for him that he can continue the tradition of winning with new players, replacing the old guard, and try to keep the franchise competitive, and try to one day bring home a championship. And he was just, we thought he was just a great guy, young, energetic, vibrant, and we just felt like we wanted to keep that going with the new players. And in 2013, Larry Hazel kind of felt that way too. He thought, we felt like, even the new players felt like, some of the new players felt like, hey, this guy can be something, and the players felt like, yeah, this guy can be something in the future. So the sky was the limit for him and for the new Dons that was taking over for the old players. Yeah, turn that fan. Yeah, turn it towards you. Turn it towards you a little bit. A little bit. I got it. Okay, there we go. Good. All right, there we go. Ooh, I got it. All right, there you go. Go ahead, baby. Oh, let's go. Come on. All right, turn towards me. Here we go. In Larry Hazel's first game, the Dons would dominate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 34-10. But with new players and new coaching staff, it was going to be some growing pains replacing a legendary coach and legendary players. The Dons would struggle a little bit, including a loss in Houston. But in week 14 on a Thursday night in San Antonio, the site where they won their first ever Megabowl, they would beat the Riders on the Thursday night 46-10. Ryan Coyle had a big day, but the Dons would finish 2013 8-8. In 2014, more of the same. They finished 8-8, highlighted with wins over Seattle 24-20, and against the Orlando Thunder late in the season 16-9, and going to his old stomping grounds in West Virginia in week 13, beating the Spartans 28-16. But another 8-8 campaign in 2014. But in 2015, things were on the bright side, because the team finished their first winning record since 2012. They went 9-7, but failed to make the playoffs. And in 2016, they would fall back to 8-8. including some games they had won but let slip away. Yeah, we had the Patriots beat and we lost to them 30-27. But they highlighted a 54-0 win over the Jets. But after that, it was 8-8. But another highlight win in 2016 was a game in the LA Coliseum where they face now the new Los Angeles Rams. And that game was a classic, and they beat them 27-23. But in 2017, the Dons would suffer their first losing season since 2002. In 15 years, their first losing season, going 7-8-1, including a loss to the Texans at home, a tie with Seattle, and the Rams taking over the West under new head man Sean McVay. In 2018 was the last straw. 2018 was the last straw of the Larry Hazel era. After controversy off the field and sparked by a 3-5 start, Larry Hazel was let go. In place, Jim Ray, interim head coach. In his first game as interim head coach, they crushed the Denver Broncos 39-14. But after that, the Dons would finish 8-8 in 2018. And Jim Ray would not coach the Dons going into 2019. But in 2019, the Dons were set to find another coach who will become the second coming of James White. In 2019, the Dons will hire the coach who will not only become the second coming of Coach White, but probably be the greatest coach in his franchise's history. His name, Manny Reyes. Coming over from Orlando, where he spent his years as an offensive coordinator, Manny Reyes built one of the greatest offenses in the 2010s as offensive coordinator of Orlando Thunder, and going to 2 Megabowls in 2011, beating the Patriots in the 2012 Megabowl, and another appearance in 2015, fun segment I do, against the Broncos where they lost. But Manny Reyes was coming home where he grew up, a kid from East LA, growing up in a Hispanic household with his grandparents. Rough life, but he made the most of it. Went to Long Beach State and was a Dons fan just like his grandfather. And for Manny, it was a dream come true, coming home, coaching his hometown team. Yeah, I think Manny Reyes was great. Manny Reyes, oh my God, what more can you say about this man? I mean, he loves his team, loved the organization, grew up in the city, know what the city is about, know what the Dons organization is about. When he was in college, watching the Dons first Mega Bowl, beating the Dragons his senior year in college in Long Beach State, and now full circle, he's now the head coach of one of the great organizations, and now he get to coach them. And boy, and what luxury he got to coach them. Yeah, and he's gonna coach guys like Seth Schultz, who've been with the team since 2018. He drafted Rich Morales out of Moorhead, bringing Jimmy Diaz, who was with him in Orlando, is his starting running back. And he had Shelton Jenkins, who'd been there since 2018 as well. And he got some great guys at offensive linemen he could work with. And I'm like, wow, the sky was the limit. And he proved it. But he had to make a decision of who was going to be his quarterback. And the quarterback that he had was either Tyree Thompson that they drafted in 2017, or continue with Warwick Locker, who was okay, but he kept getting injured and inconsistency play. And I think that one day in practice, he just decided to go with Tyree Thompson. And once he went with him, the franchise once again took off. Not immediately, but at least for the first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers on a Sunday night in the Rose Bowl. Manny Ray's first game as head coach of the Dons took on Mike Tomlin, Big Ben, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the first half, it was a nip and tuck game, and then the Dons took control and beat the Steelers 37-20 in Manny Ray's first head coaching gig with the Dons. And the Dons would go 2-2 to start this. They would draw even 2-2 to start the season before heading to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the Triangles, where they would dominate them 43-14. And more. And then come week 8 against the Arizona Cardinals. Something that is gonna live in Don's lore. That the defense forced Kyler Murray 9 interceptions. 9 interceptions. And the Dons would clobber the Cardinals 63-17. And then the last ever meeting in the LA Coliseum against the Rams on a Sunday night, the Dons would dominate the Rams 44-20. And it showed that the Manny Reyes era was off to a good start. But they did lose to Montreal, did lose to Seattle. They survived against Arizona, but on a Monday night against San Francisco, against the San Francisco 49ers, the Dons would prove their dominance. It would turn its series and turn this rivalry on its head. Oh yeah, they came out, dominated San Francisco on a Monday night. Tyree Thompson had one of his outstanding games, and they just crushed them 45-23. And their last loss of the 2019 season will be against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. And I think after that game, the team came together and said, let's finish the season out right. And just like that, they would beat Seattle on a Thursday night in the Rose Bowl. And their last 2 games will finish on the road, beating the Saints 41-38. And before heading to Coach Reyes' old stomping grounds in Orlando to face the Thunder, the eventual NFC champions that year. Yeah, that game, that was a crazy game. And late in the game, the Thunder were leading, and the Dons needed a spark to keep their playoff bowl and playoff hopes alive. And yeah, we were trying to find somebody to make a play, but then Orlando made a critical mistake that would send the game into overtime. And when they did that, I said, hey, let's take advantage, and now let's win. And just like that, on that drive, the Dons drove down the field, and their kicker kicked a game-winning field goal that sent the Dons into the playoff bowl. And just like that, the Dons entered the playoff bowl in the Rose Bowl in their own stadium against the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry, And in the playoff bowl, the Dons would dominate the Titans. They would shut down Derrick Henry. Seth Schultz would have 3 sacks, and Tyree Thompson would perform well and throw 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns. But either way it go, the Dons beat the Titans to win the 2019 playoff bowl, and the Manny Reyes era had just begun. Yeah, that playoff bowl win against the Titans, it symbolized great things to come in the 2020s. The 2020s. Before the 2020 season gets started, 2 things happen. One, the death of NBA legend and Lakers star Kobe Bryant. And then after that, COVID. The death of Kobe, the plane crash, and that was really hard. Not only for Laker fans, but for the city of Los Angeles, because Kobe meant so much to the city, to the organization, and really just to me personally, because it was always that Mamba mentality. He always on the court, just ready to just win and take charge, and that's what that's what it taught us about the work ethic, the sacrifice that you put in, the toughness mentally, physically, spiritually, and just not giving up. And that's what the Mamba mentality truly mean, not giving up and just about the work. So Kobe was going to be missed, and boy, that was really a sad time when not only him but his daughter Gigi and the other people on the plane that got killed and lost their lives, and that really just shook us all up. And then I think months later, COVID and the coronavirus, the COVID hit, and just like, man, 2020 was off to a bad start, and you didn't know what you were gonna do, or what was gonna happen. We just had to be on our P's and Q's and make sure everybody was safe and everybody was okay. And then we had protests, and it was just a mess. 2020 started off as a mess, but for the Dons, 2020 was also a fresh start to take back the NFC West and take back the West Coast and go back to the postseason. Go back to the actual postseason for the first time since 2011. Yeah, it's been a decade since we last won a division, and I know Manny Reyes harped on that, but we had to take a lot of COVID tests. We had to make sure everybody was okay. Nobody was feeling ill. And by the way, we had training camp, but we had no preseason games, so it was hard to get film on people. So we had to keep working together. We had to stay together. We had to stay the course, and we just had to stay focused. And the whole year we didn't have fans in the Rose Bowl. Kind of odd, but we just want to make sure everybody was safe. So not only that, we want to make sure everybody's safe. And in 2020, we were going to dedicate the 2020 season to Kobe and Gigi, for them. And just like that, 2020 started off against the Spartans. They beat them 24-16 and traveled up to Santa Clara to face the 49ers, where they haven't won up in San Francisco since 2012. Manny Reyes went up there in the Dons, and they beat the 49ers for the first time since 2012 up in Santa Clara. But then week 3, the Dons made a huge decision. The Triangles, the Dons acquired Jerome Simpson from the Nebraska Triangles. One of the best receivers in Dons history since Dwayne White and Terrence Wells. Jerome Simpson, before they played the Cardinals in Week 3, was acquired on the Dons watch from the Triangles. Been with the Triangles since 2014, but had some pretty good seasons, but never could get to the postseason. Just like they said with Kevin Knight, they said he was a locker room problem. But when he came to the Dons, it proved that none of that was true. And in week 4 on a Sunday night in Philadelphia, Jerome Simpson was going to show the world and the Philadelphia Eagles how good and how talented and not a problem and not a locker room problem that Jerome Simpson was. And I remember that first game against Philadelphia, he caught 2 touchdown passes. I mean, he just really had a big night that night. And that was the launching pad of him having a big year. And that unlocked Tyreek Thompson to have one of his best seasons and leading him to being the league MVP in 2020. And just like that, the Dons would roll through the 2020 season on their best start ever in franchise history before falling to the Seattle Seahawks in Week 12. The Dons will finish a franchise best 15 games with 1 loss in their first NFC West title since 2011, and in the 2020 divisional round against the Green Bay Packers, the Dons would show their true talent, and they would dominate the Packers 44-28. And they would win their first postseason game, their actual first NFC playoff game since 2011. And they will make it to the NFC Championship game for the first time since 2011 in a decade. But against Tampa Bay, the Dons would lose the NFC Championship game to the Buccaneers, falling short of going to the Megabowl. That game was tough, but it was the first time since 2011 that the Dons had been to an NFC Championship game, even though we lost at home with no fans, and Tampa came in and did a good job, and they beat us, and they held us. We feel like, hey, the sky was still the limit, even though we lost. All right, in 2021, the NFL added another game, but the results remain the same. Manny Reyes entered his 3rd year, and the Dons were looking to make the entire league feel their pain after they lost to the Buccaneers in the NFC Championship game. The first game in Minnesota, where the Dons beat the Vikings 35-6, and they would continue the dominance all the way to the postseason. But highlighted in that 2021 season were 2 big wins, both in prime time. Well, actually, all 3 of them. The Thanksgiving night win, beating the Rams on a Thanksgiving night in SoFi with Rich Morales' pick 6 on Matthew Stafford. Fun segment. And the overtime thriller on a Sunday night in the Rose Bowl against the Cardinals, where Tyreek Thompson... Well, actually, before we get to that, the Cardinals had a halftime lead, but the Dons made adjustments, came all the way back, and took the game to overtime. Rich Morales' key interception set up the game-winning touchdown in overtime from Tyreek Thompson to Jerome Simpson. And just like that, the Dons took control of the West and the travel to Orlando, where the Dons won another classic with another game-winning touchdown with Tyreek Thompson out for the game, the backup quarterback threw the game winner to Jerome Simpson to give him a 31-27 win over the Thunder and another 15-win season, going 15-1-1 in the new 17-game schedule. They entered the 2021 playoffs against the Montreal Machine in the divisional round, and they would beat them 51-24 to advance to the NFC Championship game against their crosstown division foe, the Los Angeles Rams. But in that game, the Rams would come to the Rose Bowl and beat the Dons, and once again, another NFC Championship game loss on their home field, this time to the Rams, who would go on and win the Megabowl 2 weeks later. And the final chapter in the NFC West for the Dons ended with a loss. But 2022, the best was yet to come. After the 2020 NFC Championship game loss to the Rams, I think that was the beginning of the Dons' run to the 3 straight Mega Bowls that they would win. Because I remember that game, they had a chance to take the lead, not only take the lead, but win the game. And Tyreek just misfired, and that was a shocker because Tyreek never misfire on a throw, and he did, and the Rams went on and won the NFC Championship, and they advanced to the Mega Bowl. And just like that, they would have to wait until next year. 2022, the Dons will move into a new division called the NFC Coastal, with the Thunder, Machine, and the Spartans. Manny Reyes entered his 4th year. Tyreek Thompson been with them since 2017, but the pressure remained. When will the Dons, with the pressure remain, and one question lingered: can the Dons finally get over the hump and not only get to the Mega Bowl, but win the Mega Bowl? And that answer in 2022 started with a yes. But their journey to Glendale, Arizona started in SoFi against their former NFC West rival, the Los Angeles Rams, the defending world champions. The Dons marched into SoFi and dominated the Rams, putting up a 41-17 shellacking to let the Rams and the league know that the Dons were sending a message that 2022 was going to be their year. And yeah, they played really well. They dominated the Rams, but it came with a cost. Jerome Simpson injured his elbow and was out 6 weeks. But the team kept going. They beat the Hawaii Kings, who are now in the AAFC Coastal. And on a Thursday night, a wacky, weird, crazy win in the Rose Bowl against the Chicago Bears in overtime pushed the Dons' record to 3-0 before they ventured to Hartford, Connecticut on a Sunday night against their Megabowl foe rivals, the Shamrocks, who's also in the AFC Coastal. And in that game, Tyreek Thompson put on a performance. Shelton Jenkins stepped up when Jerome Simpson was out. And Seth Schultz, who will become the Defensive Player of the Year, dominated the Shamrocks and beat them 42-10 to go 4-0. And in the following week, the first NFC Coastal battle with the Orlando Thunder, and Seth Schultz again took over, had 5 sacks, and the Dons dominated the Thunder 38-13, and they continued to roll through the season until they faced the Triangles, where Jerome Simpson returned not only returned to the Dons lineup, but he returned to Lincoln, Nebraska against his former team, the Triangles. And Jerome Simpson put on a show, scoring 2 touchdowns, over 200 yards receiving, and the Dons beat down the Triangles 48-7. And they beat down the machine on a Monday night and on a Thanksgiving night against Philadelphia. On a Thanksgiving night against Philadelphia, the Dons will show the Eagles who's the best team in the NFC by beating them 41-28 on a Thanksgiving night in the Rose Bowl. And then, that Thanksgiving night game against the Eagles showed that the Dons have really grasped of coming together, being a team, being committed and laying it on the line for one another. And that Eagle game, they showed it. And then the next week, the Dons will clinch the first ever NFC Coastal Division by beating their former division rival, the 49ers, in Mexico City on a Sunday night. Yeah, that was a great game. They went out and played. I think they wore their throwbacks, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, and they won the first ever NFC Coastal Division. They did it in Mexico City. That was the crazy part. And the Dons will finish the 2022 season 15-2 and heading into the playoffs as the number 1 seed in the NFC. And they would face their NFC Coastal rival, the Orlando Thunder. In the Super Wild Card, the Thunder played hard, tried to keep it close, but the Dons took advantage and pulled away late to earn a wild card victory over the Thunder. But the next game against their NorCal rivals, the 49ers, it was equally dramatic. A back and forth nip and tuck game with the 49ers. The Dons were playing their playoff lives. And late in the fourth quarter, took a 30-27 lead, and they punt the ball. And then a crucial mistake by the Niners. And the Dons capitalized. Yeah, he muffed the punt. I think the Niners were trying to play for overtime, but they were trying to drive down the ball, try to play for overtime, and I think the guy that tried to fair catch it, he muffed it, and then when he muffed it, the Dons recovered it, and then after that, the game was over. The Dons just milked the clock, made the Niners burn all their timeouts, and the Dons won the game and back in the NFC Championship game. And the Dons made it back to the NFC Championship game at home, this time against the Philadelphia Eagles again. But this time, the Dons were not going to lose this one. In the first half, the Eagles kept it close. But in the second half, the Dons would shut the Eagles out the rest of the way. And they would beat them 44-21 to earn their first trip to the Megabowl since 2009 and their first NFC Championship since 2009. Yeah, and with fans and with the fans there like in 2021, but in 2022 it was different. The fans were raucous, but last year it was raucous too, but the Rams there was some Rams fans there too, but this one was special because it was mostly Dons fans. It was some Eagle fans, but it was mostly Dons fans, and boy, we were just happy that we won that NFC Championship game and beat the Eagles, and we were off to the Megabowl. And Manny Reyes, when he took over in 2019, this was the vision. To put the Dons back on the map and try to bring them another championship. And now we go to Glendale, Arizona, and we're playing in the Megabowl. And man, it's just great. And their Megabowl opponent will be a team that will be the toughest team they will face all year. 2023 Megabowl in Glendale, Arizona. Dons making their first trip back since 2009, and they were facing the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, and that crew, Chris Jones, and all those great players. And we just want to show that we're a really good team as well. And the Dons were underdogs in this game. And they were underdogs in this game. But coming out of the tunnel, a coaching legend was ready to pass down the championship legacy and what it means to be a Don to play in this game. And he was ready to pass it down to the current Dons that was playing in this game to get them to understand what it means to be a Don and what it means to be a champion. Yeah, Coach White coming out of the tunnel. Before we came out of the tunnel, it was just like what Dean Allen's son, Shane Allen, did in the 06 Mega Bowl. He came out of the tunnel, and they came out. So Coach White did the same thing for us. And once we ran out of the tunnel, we just knew we got to win this game. We cannot let the legend down. And just like that, in the first quarter, the first touchdown of the game was a crazy one. But it will live not only in Don's lore, but in NFL history. Yeah. The 16-yard touchdown pass to Jerome Simpson, it was kind of a funky play. The snap, Tyreek kind of mishandled the snap, but he got the ball and he was trying to throw it away. But in the midst of throwing it away, Jerome Simpson got there in the nick of time and he made one hell of a catch. Just extending his body, and he catches the ball and had the awareness to get his feet down in the end zone for a touchdown. And we took a lead. Despite the missed extra points, the Dons took an 18-0 lead into the half. And at halftime, Coach said, "Hey, it's not enough. We got to stay on the attack. We must stay on the attack. We cannot let Kansas City back in the game. So we got to stay focused, stay on the grind, and finish this game out the right way." And just like that, in the second half, Jimmy Diaz will score a 30-yard touchdown to extend the lead to 25-0. The Chiefs did score to make it close, but the last touchdown to Shelton Jenkins put the game out of reach, even though the Chiefs scored the last touchdown. But that's the close thing. The Chiefs will come to making a comeback, and the final first down of the game, clinch the Dons' third Mega Bowl championship in franchise history. And just like that, the Dons were Mega Bowl champions again. Tyreek Thompson, not only the league MVP in 2022, but the Mega Bowl MVP. 6 of 8, 210 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And Manny Reyes, the second Hispanic head coach ever to win the Mega Bowl. And the Dons were back on top of the world and back on Pro Football Summit. That night in Glendale, Arizona, brought back memories of Don's past. Seeing the Dons in the mid-late 2000s winning Mega Bowls and winning a lot of big games, it was just installed in us that we do the same. And to win the franchise's third Mega Bowl was a great thing. In the post-game locker room, the coaching whistle championship keychain. Hold on. And in the post-game locker room, the coaching whistle championship keychain that was passed down to Coach White from Shane Allen, Dean Allen's son, was now being passed to Manny Reyes from Coach White. And I remember that moment when Coach White passed that keychain, the coaching championship whistle keychain, to Manny Reyes in the locker room after they beat the Chiefs in the Megabowl. Was one of the greatest moments and feelings ever. That was one of the greatest memories that I remember. It's like the legend passing down or passing the torch on to the next guy who was going to be the legend going forward and taking the Dons organization to heights really haven't been since he coached it. And Manny Reyes done that great job in Glendale and beating the Chiefs in that Megabowl was a great feeling. And Manny Reyes will continue that greatness into the 2023 season. The 2023 season featured the Dons being defending world champions. But the Dons were far from satisfied from that championship victory against the Chiefs in the 2023 Mega Bowl. They look at the 2023 season as a chance to do it again. In their first game, and the Dons, before we get to that, the Dons were a preseason favorite, a heavy preseason favorite to do it again. And in the first game of the season against the Thunder, it played out that way on opening night. Oh yeah, I remember the banner night. Yep. The 2023 Mega Bowl banner next to the 09, 05, and the 57 teams that won championships. And I remember going into the 2023 season, we got a chance to add another one. So our saying is, what's stopping us? What's stopping us? The only people that's stopping us is ourselves. So we're going into 2023 season thinking, let's do that again. Let's win it again. And a new Mega Bowl trophy, the new golden Mega Bowl trophy, was being displayed. And the first game against Orlando, the NFC Coastal rivals, they would beat them 41-3. And the Dons, like always, got off to a fantastic start. Probably the best team ever in the Coach White era. But before we get to that, including that, before we get to all that, the first three games were dominant. Played the Rams in week 4 and won a 31-28 game over the Rams. And then the next week put up 65 against the Raiders. And the Dons will continue to win. And then the week 8 showdown on a Sunday night against the Chargers. It was a tight contested game. And late in the fourth quarter, the Chargers were driving. And that's when Seth Schultz, who will win Defensive Player of the Year again in 2023, made one of the biggest plays of the season. Yeah, he came off the edge, got to Justin Herbert, forced a fumble, and Wilson recovered the fumble, and we got the ball, and we ran out the clock, and we won the game. And just like that, the Dons will beat the Chargers. But the next week in West Virginia, the Dons will lose their first game of the year. Oh man, that was a bad loss. That was a bad loss because the Spartans were not a good team, and we kind of let that one get away from us. And that was just a bad game, bad loss, and we just knew we couldn't dwell on it, so we had to move on to the next one. But the next week on a Sunday night in a rematch with Kansas City, they fared no better. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs by 2 points. Yeah, that was another tough one. But the difference with that loss and to the Spartans loss, the Chiefs were a really good team. So it was kind of understandable. But the Spartans, that was the inexcusable one. We shouldn't have lost that one. But after the Chiefs game, the Dons regrouped. On a Monday night against Philadelphia, the Dons went on the greatest runs in NFL and franchise history. They beat the Eagles 42-22, highlighted by Willie Jones' game-clinching touchdown. And then the Dons rolled through the 2023 season, including a highlight win in Orlando against the Thunder. Late in the game, the Dons were driving. They needed a touchdown to get back in the game. And at the 1-yard line, Dons fullback Siobhan Wells punched it in to give the Dons the go-ahead touchdown. But it was Sean May, the free safety, who closed out the game with the interception. And just like that, the Dons will finish the 2023 season 14-3, another NFC Coastal Division title, and the postseason. One of the greatest postseason runs in recent memory. The first game against the Seattle Seahawks at home. The Dons would dominate, getting after Geno Smith and beating the Seattle Seahawks 51-22. And in the divisional round against the Cowboys, they would give the Cowboys one of their worst losses in playoff franchise history. In the Cowboys playoff franchise history, the worst loss, beating them 52-17. And then the NFC Championship game against their crosstown hated foe, the Los Angeles Rams. And the Dons came out dominating. There was no way the Dons were going to lose that game. No way. The Dons came out and they were so focused and so ready to win this game. So ready to win that game and punch another ticket to the Megabowl. And just like that, the Dons, for the first time in franchise history, won back-to-back NFC Championship games. That was one of the greatest moments, winning back-to-back NFC Championship games and going back to the Megabowl for the first time in franchise history. Going back to the Megabowl again and trying to win back-to-back Megabowls for the first time ever in franchise history has never been done. And the first time for the first time in 2 decades and 20 years, and over 20 years, it was I feel like the Dons was that team. And to beat the Rams, to do that was a great feeling. In the 2024 Megabowl, the Dons will put on the most dominant performance ever in Megabowl history against the Nebraska Triangles, Jerome Simpson's former team, who won the AAFC in Orlando, Florida, in Camping World Stadium. In Camping World Stadium, the Dons will show the Triangles what championship football is all about. Triangles took a 3-0 lead until Jimmy Diaz broke off one of his first 2 big touchdown runs. First, a 47-yard touchdown. Jimmy Diaz, who ended up being 2023 Offensive Player of the Year, put on one of the most dazzling performances ever seen in the Megabowl. After the Triangles kicked another field goal, the Dons the Dons would score and dominate the Triangles the rest of the way, with Tyree Thompson throwing 5 touchdown passes. The first one to the Don slot receiver, couldn't think of his name, and another one to McCormick. And the defense of the Dons dominated the Triangles. One of the most dominant performances ever seen in the Megabowl. Seth Schultz with 2 sacks, and the backup outside linebacker and Rich Morales both had pick sixes in the game. Jerome Simpson scored 2 touchdowns in the Megabowl, and Megabowl MVP Tyree Thompson threw 5 touchdowns for 300 yards. But the highlight play of the game, and in Don's memory and in NFL history, will be Jimmy Diaz's 78-yard touchdown run. Oh yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, I remember Jimmy Diaz got a crease. He hit it. He was halfway, and then I think Mike's analog froze on him. But then he just pushed. I think he pushed one of the buttons, and he kept going. And Jimmy Diaz was off to the races. And hey, the rest was history. And just like that, the Dons would crush the Triangles 63-3 to win the franchise's 4th Mega Bowl, and the first team since the New England Patriots in the 2000s to win back-to-back Mega Bowls, and the first team to win the new Mega Bowl trophy, the new Golden Mega Bowl trophy from the Madden 09 tournament bracketry. Yeah, that was. You thought the one against Kansas City was great, but the one against Orlando, that was one of the greatest moments, probably the greatest performance the Dons team has ever put on. And I think the 2023 team, I think that was probably the best team ever in the Manny Reyes era, especially in the postseason, because every time the defense would just took it to another level. Same thing with the offense. It was just, man, the defense didn't allow too many. I mean, until it got to the Mega Bowl. The Mega Bowl, the Triangle, didn't score a touchdown. They only kept holding the field goals and didn't score the rest of the way. And it couldn't show you the testament of Manny Reyes and the coaching staff and what they have now built. And now, Manny Reyes era was becoming probably the best era since the Coach White era. But and now I think probably, if not better. And I think now, with this Mega Bowl performance, dominance over the Triangles, I think now that dynasty talk was popping up after they beat the Triangles. After they beat the Triangles by 57 points, the largest margin of victory ever in Mega Bowl history, I think Dons fans, and writers and sports writers were talking about dynasty. And the only way they become a dynasty if they be the first team ever to three-peat it. And going into 2024, that's what the Dons already had in mind. (2024), after winning back-to-back Mega Bowls, the Manny Reyes, the Dons organization was setting their sight on becoming the first team ever to win 3 consecutive Mega Bowls. And I think going into training camp, the Dons players, they didn't talk about it to the public. They probably talked amongst themselves about becoming the first team to win 3 in a row. But they knew that it was going to be harder because teams are now going to come after them really hard because they know that you're the two-time defending champions, and people are really going to be gunning for you to knock you off that throne. So they knew going in 2024 they had to be prepared. But the Dons are always prepared. And 2024 proved to be the last season ever of the NFC Coastal Division because the following year they were going back to the West. But to close it out, the Dons would do it again. They'd have to win the division again and try to do it. To do was never been done ever in NFL history. To win 3 consecutive Megabowls. And another banner night, raising another banner next to those championship teams and their opponent, the Minnesota Vikings, the Dons look more than ready to three-peat. Yeah, they dominated the Vikings in that game 49-7. And they looked sharp, crushing the Spartans and Cowboys before playing that thrilling Sunday night game against the Ravens. Oh, that Ravens game, oh man, that was a tough one. That was a tough game. I mean, the Ravens, they had a 2-touchdown lead on us. Derrick Henry was just running all over us, and that was the first time in a long time that the Dons allowed somebody to go over 200 yards on us. But as 2-time defending champions, the Dons always find a way to battle back. And just like that, they did. Battled back and scored and made some big plays. Rick Charles caught an interception. But the biggest play of the game, Jerome Simpson. His sack fumble on Lamar Jackson. And not only that, he not only sacked Lamar Jackson and caused the fumble, he recovered it and he returned it for a touchdown. That's probably one of the greatest moments of his career. And just like that, the Dons took the lead, but the Ravens still drove down the field to kick a game-winning field goal. But the kicker missed, and the Dons survived. And the Dons traveled to Columbus to face the Bulldogs. Haven't been to Columbus since 2004, but the Dons once again dominated the Bulldogs and beat them 49-13. Wins over the Steelers, Saints, Bengals on a Thursday night, and going up to Cleveland for the first time since 2015, but winning in Cleveland for the first time since 71, raised their record. Raised their record to 9-0, heading to Detroit on a Sunday night. And on that Sunday night game, the Dons, more the same, dominated the Lions and put up 50 points to beat the Lions 51-17. And the Dons kept rolling until they went up to the nation's capital and played the Commanders. And lost their first game of the season. Everything went wrong in that game. I mean, just turnovers, bad play, some bad calls went against us. And we lost. But the following week, they lost again to the Bulldogs. And that would be the last loss of the season. The Dons will finish 15-2, including their first win, including their first game as the home team in SoFi against the Seattle Seahawks, where they beat them 52-21 on a Sunday night on the Madden 09. And in the playoffs, they faced the Bulldogs, who beat the Packers in the first ever play-in game. But the Dons trailed at halftime before making adjustments. Yeah, we did trail at halftime, and you could tell guys were getting a little frustrated because the Bulldogs, but they were a division rival. They were a division rival, and we had to make adjustments. And once we made those adjustments, we took control. And just like that, the Dons shut the Bulldogs out the rest of the way, and won the game 40-16 to advance to the divisional round against the Washington Commanders, where Jimmy Diaz put on one of the best performances ever in postseason history, going for 283 yards and scoring that 90-yard touchdown run, the longest in Don's playoff history since that 78-yard touchdown run against the Triangles in the Megabowl. And the Dons would crush the Commanders 54-7. And the 2024 NFC Championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles, more of the same. A dominant performance and did not allow a touchdown, as the Dons would crush the Eagles 37-3 to advance to the Megabowl once again. And boy, the Dons, for the first time, winning 3 straight NFC Championship games, going to 5 straight NFC Championship games and winning 3 in a row, and now going back to the Megabowl, trying to make history to win 3 Megabowls in a row. That was just unbelievable. And they were going to play in Vegas to make history. In Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada, the Los Angeles Dons were playing their 3rd straight Megabowl, their 8th Megabowl appearance overall, this time against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen and the Bills making their first appearance since '93. But this night would belong to the Dons. And this proved to be Manny Reyes, Tyreek Thompson, Jerome Simpson, Seth Schultz, Rich Morales, and Jimmy Diaz's final game ever in the NFL. In my fun segment. In the first half, there was a nip and tuck game. The Bills and the Dons were going head to head, trading points. The Bills scored the first, going 3-0. Jimmy Diaz scored a touchdown, and Don's kicker kick a field goal, take a 10-3 lead. Bills scored right back. And then Tyreek Thompson throws to Shelton Jenkins, his only touchdown pass of the game, Tyreek Thompson. And the backup quarterback who replaced Josh Allen for his temporary injury threw a touchdown pass to the slot receiver for the Bills. And Don's kicked 2 field goals. And the halftime was 23-20. And, at halftime, he said, "Hey, guys, we're fine. We're up 3 points. I remember Coach Red said, we're up 3 points. We're fine. All we got to do is continue to play Don's football and just continue to execute and do our job professionally. We're going to win the game." But 2 more field goals by the Don's kicker, who set a Mega Bowl record, 5 field goals. But the Bills brought the game back to 5 with a touchdown pass from Josh Allen to the tight end. But the Dons, at the end of the day, had the championship answer and the pedigree to pull the game away. Siobhan Wells scored a 10-yard touchdown, and Willie Jones punched in the final touchdown. And the defense of the Dons forced 5 turnovers and all 5 interceptions, as the Los Angeles Dons would win the franchise's 5th Mega Bowl overall and become the first team ever to win 3 consecutive Mega Bowls. Rich Morales was the 2025 Megabowl MVP. And that game symbolized what Don's football was all about. The Manny Reyes era, it was just great. I mean, 5 straight NFC Championship appearances, 3 wins, 3 straight Mega Bowls. Not, all 6 years, never had a losing season. Just great. Five division titles in 6 years. I mean, what more can you ask? I mean, coming back to his home city where he grew up, been a Dons fan, and he led this, and he put the Dons franchise back on the map. And boy, he was really the second coming of Coach White. But man, I think after this game, even though it was his last game, I'm pretty sure Mr. Gonzalez is going to find the second coming of Manny Reyes. And just like that, the Dons made history, winning 3 consecutive Mega Bowls. No team has ever done that. And to be the first team to win 3 consecutive Mega Bowls, that says a lot about this organization, about how they just go about their business and find the right kind of players to play for this organization, and just get everybody on the same page, and not have any off the field issues, and just everyone just coming together and playing in the game the right way. And just like that, that was the last hurrah. Dons football, for years, had been the symbol of excellence. Through the ups and the downs, the Dons, proud sons of California, always find a way to fight like Dons. Through the All-American Football Conference in the 40s, the Dean Allen years, the years that they couldn't get past the Shamrocks, the down years with John Smart, the great years with Coach White, and the tough years with Larry Hazel, and the revitalized years with Manny Reyes with 3 straight Mega Bowls. The Dons are an example of what the team is all about. Los Angeles is the Dons. The Dons is Los Angeles. And they will continue that way going forward in 2025 and beyond. This is the Dons. Then, now, and forever. The past meeting the present, and the present carrying it on to the future. The Dons, America's most colorful football team, and a team that strive for excellence at every measure, that will bring a smile to a coach, player, fan, all across the world. Los Angeles will always be Don's town. Adios. So, if you enjoyed part 4 of the Dons full football history, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, feel free to subscribe, share with your family and friends, hit the notification bell when videos drop, and I'll catch you on the next one. MiketheLAdonsfan, signing off. Peace. Go Dons. Good night, everybody.